All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and kick off the call. Thanks everybody for joining today. Today we're here to talk through the Sage Intacct 2026 Release 1. I'm Lane Johnson. I lead the Sage Intacct practice here at Madkin Advisors and will be presenting today. I think I know almost everyone on the call today, so I was excited to see everybody sign up. And I've also got David Lear, who many of you know, on today as my co-host.
Yeah, thanks, Lane. Yeah, appreciate everybody joining. This is something that we've been trying to work on in the background for a while. Just to, Sage Intacct obviously does these quarterly releases, and we were looking for a way to, as our customer base grows, have a better way of getting the word out of some of these changes, and just let everybody kind of see. Not only there's probably two lenses. One lens is how have things that I use every day changed and been made better, and then also are there new things that are out there that you want to be aware of, that may be something you want to add to your day-to-day processes. And so happy to, excited to kind of work through some of this, and roll these out in the future as these releases come out. And then the only other thing I just wanted to note was we do have the Q&A and the comments up and running. We'll be monitoring those throughout. And so if anybody, as we go through the slides, has any thoughts or questions, feel free to send those over, and we'll get those answered as well. And
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
that back to you, Lane. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're going to start with AI and automation. And so this is, one of the biggest themes in this release. And so, I think kind of what stands out is, there's not just a few flashy features here, but, a lot of things that are just aimed at reducing repetitive work and, helping users make faster decisions kind of inside your everyday workflows and business processes. The first slide here, we're going to talk a little bit about, close automation. And so, Sage has really pushed close automation, close management further into the mainstream here. And so it's now available all regions. And really this includes centralized task tracking, monitoring, and it's going to give your team visibility into bottlenecks, variances. And one of the biggest updates here is it now supports multi-base currencies. So for our clients who might have a couple different currencies in play here, you can now leverage this closed automation tool. And so for multi-entity organizations, I mean, this is just a big step towards a more consistent and visible close process. And for those of you who have a lot of entities, this could be a big win around tracking your close, seeing how long things are taking, making sure everyone's staying on task and where the bottlenecks are. And so if this is something you're interested in, definitely reach out. We're really excited about a lot of these AI features that are rolling out. And then we've got close analytics. And so this is an early adopter. So, there is a separate process to join kind of the early adopter process. And we're happy to kind of talk with you more about that offline if you're interested here. And so this is an additional analytics layer on top of the close process. And, the idea here is to spot patterns, bottlenecks, opportunities in your close process without having to kind of manually pull things out into spreadsheets and do an analysis after the fact, right? So this will be kind of a real-time look into your close. So this is really useful, if you're a finance leader who wants to understand, whether or not, close is actually finished, but where time and effort is spent, by your teams. This finance intelligent agent, I was really excited to get my hands on this. So this is one of the more visible kind of co-pilot use cases in this release. Users can ask finance questions, in natural language, and the system is going to go out and summarize financial data, and give you results. And so I think what makes this interesting is not just that it's convenient, it's going to just give you, remove all those barriers, right, to getting answers. So you don't need somebody to go build a report first, right? You can just ask questions, and it's going to give you, an answer. And so, this is very much, if you're familiar with like Chat GPT or Claude, kind of just, having the ability to ask questions. And then one of the other things that I really like is it's going to kind of not only give you the answer, but it's going to give you kind of the reasoning, and the why and the how. It came up with, in this case, the top five vendors with overdue bills, right? Because, uh, we want to make sure that, we're confident in the answers that, the AI is giving us.
I'll just say, yeah, maybe add to that, Lane. I think
Yeah.
when they were first rolling this out, I remember them at the conferences talking about um, how careful they were being to make sure that the answers that people were getting from this were not hallucinations, very reliable, understand accounting and finance language. So when you ask it about revenue, it understands, should it be thinking about earned revenue, unearned revenue, like
Right.
different, different kind, like all that nuance that I think as accountants we all kind of take for granted, but sometimes when you jam that into a large language model, maybe it doesn't quite understand all that stuff, and we see that in real life with some of the tools that are kind of available off the shelf. And so this being embedded in the product has been a big area for them in development. It's something that they have been very careful about, so that it's not just kind of real freewheeling. And so pretty excited to see what the capabilities are, but also know that it's been built very thoughtfully around accounting processes and finance processes.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. So this next one, cash requirements. So this is really just about, short-term visibility, into cash. So Sage is going to be pulling your payables, receivables, bank balances into one view. And kind of the big update here is, again, this is going to be expanding across, multi-currency environments. And so, the value here is just giving you and the team, a faster read on expected cash positioning, instead of kind of having to pull all of these things out into Excel and kind of try to model it. And so again, for organizations managing multiple entities or currencies, this can make, cash planning, much more practical. And so, kind of behind the scenes, they've got, these models running to kind of help you like predict, how fast, payables are going to happen based on kind of your history, how fast receivables are going to come in, and kind of put that all together with your cash balance to kind of give you, what is maybe kind of, the next 7 days going to look like, the next, 2 weeks look like. And so again, this is an early adopter. And so, if you're interested in turning this on, please reach out. Um, the Sage Intacct Data Cloud, this one has been in the works a while as well. And so I was excited to see this finally come out, into general availability. And so this is, a secure direct connection to get your Intacct data directly into Snowflake here. And so this is just a simpler way to access your data for analytics, reporting, um, all of that stuff without having to rely on kind of a third party ETL tool to kind of move and push and pull data around. And so, for teams already investing in Snowflake that haven't connected to Sage Intacct yet, or, if you're, running Power BI or Tableau, this just creates a clean path to get your ERP data, into that kind of, reporting environment. And so, at a high level, this is just about, reducing friction, right? Getting that Sage Intacct data, into your data stack. And so, for ERP customers, you can treat Intacct as part of a more, um, complete picture, right? It opens the door for, maybe combining your fund data or your CRM data, and just giving you kind of better analytics, better dashboarding, cross-functional reporting, across your whole enterprise, and it scales really well. So
Yeah,
if
I'll just say,
you,
I think the this is something that comes up a lot um, in conversations with customers and with people who are just exploring Sage Intacct as kind of a new add to their tech stack. That people are wanting to see. I have all my information in Sage Intacct, but I have all these other data sources, and I want to bring them together and be able to analyze them with some of these visualization tools, or maybe be able to overlay some other AI tools on top of it and stuff like that. So I think this is a real win here, that they just reduced a lot of the friction that people were having to kind of do to get data out. Just make it a lot easier to publish.
yeah, and it does see kind of Snowflake becoming kind of the default answer here. So I'm excited to see more come here. And so this isn't, really necessarily kind of a flashy update, but it is just kind of an example of how really Sage is kind of all into embedding AI like across workflows and processes. And so this here is really kind of two improvements working together. You know, there is a new import service that has been out for a while, but very kind of limited into to things you can import. And so they've more broadly rolled this out to journal entries, vendors, customers, statistical entries, things like that. And but then second, now I think everybody on this call is probably seeing the enhanced list starting to roll out, and so you can kind of directly access these imports from that enhanced list, which previously there was kind of an administrative only menu you had to go here. And so it's just kind of going to be easier to incorporate this in your day to day. And so one of the things we really like is implementers. But might be really relevant to you as you kind of onboard new businesses, or set up new entities or processes. These imports allow you to kind of split fields based on an AI recommendation, right? And kind of populate those fields automatically, right? And so, in this scenario, we've got an address as a single field, city, state, zip, address one, right? And Intact, I'm sure most of you know, those are all separate fields, which makes sense. And so what this is going to do is it's going to be smart enough to take that one field and split that out, into the individual Intact fields. And so this is just really a great example of a really practical about using AI to help you clean up your data when you're importing it without having to kind of scrub things offline in Excel. So, this really is a big time saver and reduces the chance of kind of mistakes. And here you can just kind of see, another example here on contacts. But along the way, Dave mentioned kind of trust in the AI. This preview step is very important, right? It gives you a chance to validate if what the system is doing before the transformation happens and it imports the data. And so this just kind of makes it feel a lot more controllable and usable in a financial context. That you're not, you know, um, the AI hasn't kind of gone wild, and it gives you some more guardrails here. It does allow you to kind of take one field on an import and map it to multiple fields as well. And so this just makes the imports more flexible, right? So it's helpful with customers who are dealing with inconsistent templates or source files, from outside the system. And so this, I think, shows the transformation workflow pretty clearly. You're gonna select the column, you're gonna enter your AI prompt, preview the transformation, review the transform results in your table, and then if you're not getting what you want, you can kind of keep refining and refining until you get like that perfect import, and then tell the system to go ahead and create those records. And so those were kind of the AI updates this round. Dave, I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts before we move on to the next section here.
We do have one question that came in. If we want,
Sure.
I'm gonna take a
Yeah.
question real quick. So
Okay.
we have a question. Do you know if the cache requirements feature will work with external third-party AP solutions, Ramp, Bill.com, et cetera? So I guess that the predictive cache requirements
Yeah,
AI
it
piece.
will. So those systems, would be syncing and creating accounts payable bills, AR invoices, all into Intact. And so that's kind of the data sources it would be looking at. So as long as those bills, invoices are coming into Intact, it would work with that as well.
Okay, that's great.
All right. So next we'll move into more general operations and controls. And so, this is more kind of practical changes that help accounting and finance teams work more efficiently. This will be one area, like Dave mentioned, that some of this, we've got a mixed audience that might not be relevant to you. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. So the first one, this is a big win if you're have the project dimension enabled. This is just a really strong productivity improvement. So you can now filter projects, select many of them, kind of do a bulk select and update fields in mass, instead of kind of going one by one historically into each project and updating it. So, this really is going to reduce your administrative effort. And, previously there was typically like a couple third party tools that, had been created to do these mass project updates. This is just a great example of how Sage is like, taking customer feedback and feeding it into the project. So if you're running projects and you find you're doing mass updates, this is on, this is free, this is out there. Please reach out and we can kind of talk through exactly how this works, or show you some examples in a demo environment. For those of you using recurring transactions, I think kind of one of the complaints there was, when things might fail, it was kind of not as proactive as it should be, and kind of alerting the team when there's problems. And so this is going to give you better visibility into when recurring AP and AR transactions fail. And so it's going to not only give the person who created that recurring transaction an invoice, an email with very clear instructions and next steps and the error on why it failed, but it also allows you to notify like an administrative contact, right? And so, maybe you as a controller want to get copied anytime these are failing. So you're kind of aware, maybe there's something set up under somebody's user ID, and they've left the company, and things keep failing and you don't notice it. And so, this is just a way to reduce risk of missing an invoice, missing a bill, when the original owner is unavailable. Maybe they're out of the office on vacation, or just something happens unexpectedly. For those of you using advances, um, these can now be done at the top level, again, even at a multi-base currency environment. So, we've seen several updates this go round focused on kind of incorporating existing functionality where there's multiple base currencies. So, I love to see that for a lot of our customers. And so historically, you've only been able to enter these advances at the entity level, which is pretty limiting. So this allows you to do things at the top level where these advances from, say, one entity can be applied to another entity, which I think happens a lot in practice when you have, multiple entities going on. Customer health. So I think this is just a great example of bringing customer CRM information and kind of your finance and accounting information together. And so Sage has added a health score, a health status, and an at risk for churn field. And this just gives the team a place to store those and report on those with inside Sage Intacct. And this is kind of bridging, finance operations and customer health signals that kind of could be coming in from CRM, to allow you to kind of take action. Um, And so, I think from a user perspective, this is really simple, but can be useful. So, it becomes available in the context where AR and customer related workflows are already happening, and just allows you to maybe be a bit more proactive with your customers, just across the board. And so just an easy way to operationalize, information from a different system into Sage Intacct. Um, Billing groups. And so this is a really interesting feature that lets your teams group customers with similar invoicing needs together, apply common charges, and streamline that invoice creation process. And so, for organizations with repeatable billing patterns, which I know is not everyone on this call, this can reduce a lot of manual steps and help standardize how billing is handled across, similar customer groups. Um, and so, instead of setting up charges one by one on customer invoices, after they're generated, this allows you to define charges at a group level and, reuse that every month, right? And so it's just going to reduce repetitive maintenance and help keep your billing logic, more consistent, repeatable, um, month in, month out. And then here is just an example, once the groups and charges are in place, your invoice generation becomes much easier to automate and review in bulk. The billing history is also going to let your team see, what's already been run, what's coming next, and improve controls over that whole billing process. And so just kind of one note there before I move on that, really this is for those of you who have like the project billing module enabled, like this is really kind of designed around that. Simplified check printing. So hopefully there's not many of you on this call still printing checks, but this is just a small, feature, an update in the UI. The address field, now only appears when it's needed, and the logo control is a bit more intuitive. So, but if you are still printing checks and you're tired of that, we'd love to have a conversation about some of the other more streamlined electronic payment options available in Sage Intacct. Uh, GL account reconciliation. So this is, about bringing some more structure and control into your GL reconciliation. So this allows users to match offsetting debits and credits within an account or, account group through a dedicated reconciliation report. And so I think really the value here is faster exception handling, clear documentation, and less dependence on spreadsheet to kind of manage your balance sheet reconciliations. And so, you can see here, very similar like look and feel to the bank rec, but just on, maybe your prepaid expense account. We want to match debits and credits for a particular prepaid and kind of make sure that everything is kind of working as expected. And so I think the real point here is, that this matching is happening inside of Sage Intacct and not outside in Excel, which creates, a more auditable process. It's going to give your teams a clear way to track both matched and unmatched activity over time. All right, for our customers using purchasing, this is a really significant workflow improvement. Instead of approving a transaction at the header level, approvers can now act on individual lines. Those lines can be routed by dimensions like department, project, location, and you can combine line level and header level rules now. Um, and I think this is just a much better purchasing workflow that's more connected to kind of how it works in reality versus just kind of these previous header level rules. So, if you're running purchasing and have approvals turned on, please reach out here and let's talk about this one. Okay, this is my favorite update I've been waiting a long time for. So this is in dynamic allocations. And this is just a really smart simplification that I think we've all been asking for a long time. So you can now use the source account group as the target, which makes it easier to kind of allocate things and keep that, original account. And so previously, if you wanted to like keep that source account, let's say you're allocating, the entire P&L, you would need one account for each P&L account. Now, you can go from, we've had customers go from hundreds, thousands of rules down to, tens of rules. And so this is just really a huge win. And so, if you're a finance team that's managing complex allocations, this really reduces the number of steps, the number of rules, and it makes the logic much easier for the team to understand and review and maintain going forward. And so just one note there. I know Dave has some comments here as well. We really love this one, but if you have existing rules, best practice is please don't kind of try to retrofit those old definitions. Let's reach out here and we'll help you create these new definitions and simplify your rules and turn off all the old rules.
Yeah, I think the only thing I was going to throw in, Lane, and maybe you can help elaborate here. I think we kind of have a mix of customers on the call, and this may be sort of a module that not everyone's aware of. And we use it for lots of different reasons, right? Depending on kind of what the customer is. And so I don't know if it'd be worth calling out just a couple of the use cases that we see,
Sure.
you know, across some of the different industries that people are on the call.
Yeah. So, what Sage really designed this for was the perfect use case is, departmental allocations, right? So maybe you've got overhead departments that you're wanting to allocate to, your actual business line. So maybe administration, HR, accounting, finance, IT, those all get kind of allocated based on really any basis you can come up with to kind of your operating departments, and that allows you to kind of see a fully costed operating department. So I think that was the original intent, and it does a really great job at that, and now an even better job that we can just kind of have some very simple rules. I think, but we end up leveraging this for a lot of our clients is investor partner allocations, right? So after you close your books, taking that P&L and closing it out to your investors, which allows you to kind of create some really more robust capital statements. I think a lot of times we see people just kind of doing a very simple closeout entry to maybe an equity account for the owner. But this allows you to kind of, give those stakeholders, those investors, those owners, those partners, however you think about it, a lot of detail on, what's going into their capital account, right? Not just contributions, distributions, and this big lump net income number. It's like how much is revenue from this department, how much is dividend income, interest income, how much professional services am I getting hit with, travel, and so that's, I think, typically what we have done most of the time, outside of certainly, the departmental
Mhm.
allocations. And then I think most recently we've figured out we can leverage this for kind of an equity pickup exercise. So, taking activity recorded at a lower tier, moving it up, offsetting that on the balance sheet at an upper tier entity. Um, and then just kind of a last example would be like taking people's payroll cost and allocating that by a time study, across different business lines or different entities. And so this is like one of my favorite tools in the whole product. So lots of different use cases there.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think, maybe the kind of the idea here being like if anybody's kind of out there who's spending a lot of time in spreadsheets trying to do
Yeah.
allocations, for various purposes, there may be a much easier way, and we should maybe talk about that.
Okay. The last section today is going to focus on fixed asset management. So just a reminder, these updates only apply to the new Sage fixed asset management offering. There is an older, what's called SIG version that some of you might be on. And I think that the one of the takeaways here is if you're still on the older SIG version, there is an upgrade path now for everyone to get on the new Sage fixed asset version, which is more a conversion path versus, a total re-implementation. So if you're on that old version, uh, please reach out and let's kind of talk about, what the upgrade to the new Sage fixed asset management system is. And we can kind of see what that might look like for you. So the big highlights are, construction in progress. You can now kind of change costs with AP adjustments, a new roll forward report, and just some more flexibility on kind of how you create the fixed asset classes in your day to day. So this first one, this is going to give you a more complete life cycle for your SIP, right? You can acquire and track construction in progress assets, continue accumulating that cost over time, and then capitalize that asset and place it in service when it's ready. And so, I think the real win here is, a tighter integration with AP and purchasing and less manual handling right outside of the system when you do have kind of construction going on. This is going to provide a really clean way to adjust asset costs uh, through an accounts payable adjustment. So previously you could create assets from an AP bill, but there was no way within the AP module to kind of make adjustments there, which I think happens in real life. And so I think this is just an important update to remove manual rework, and it's going to help keep your depreciation schedules accurate after that adjustment. And so the cool thing here is after you make that adjustment, your future depreciation schedules will automatically update to take that into account. A new roll forward report, this is really about reporting and control improvement. It's going to give you the opening balance, closing balance for cost, depreciation, net book value, which is going to make it easier to reconcile your fixed asset and really support your reporting needs without building things outside of the system in Excel, which is, what we always want to try to prevent. And then the last one is just, more flexibility on your asset setup. Previously, you could only kind of have one GL account per class. Basically, you can simplify your chart of accounts design and make it easier to align asset creation kind of from the start. And so, this just gives you a good way to keep your chart tight, but have lots more detail in this fixed asset subledger. All right, so that seemed pretty quick to me. That's kind of the main highlights we wanted to cover. Right, just focusing on faster close, better visibility, practical AI, and just kind of scaling, operations and control, across the board. So, Dave, I'm not sure if we have any more questions, comments.
I haven't seen any really come in. We can hang out for a minute and see if anybody has anything they want to drop in the
Okay.
Q&A. But in the interim, I think to your point here, I mean, I think some of this stuff is we're going through it pretty fast, and if anybody's out there and seeing something that was interesting or something that you may not have even been aware that the Sage has, I mean, definitely reach out to me or Lane here, and we can get a call put together and see if there's something that can be added, or maybe you've got third party solutions that now can be brought into the system, and you don't need the third party solution anymore. So always happy to kind of talk through options there and see how we can extend the product and make your life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we can just hang out on the call. If anybody wants to dig into something specific, or we can always follow up later. And so I guess we'll leave that there, and we hope to see everybody in June after we've had a chance to digest the R2 uh, updates in 2026. So appreciate everybody's time. Hope hope to hear from a lot of you.
All right. We'll end the meeting here, but yeah, definitely reach out if you want to continue the conversation. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Okay, thanks everybody.